Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. D. Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Thanks to Chosen Foods for supporting the Ignited podcast. Chosen Foods is a health food company with a focus on real, nourishing food. They offer a variety of healthy fats, plant-based proteins, and ancient superfoods.
You know, I love that. I love Chosen Foods because of their 100% pure coconut oil spray. It's so versatile. I can add it to sauteed veggies, to my scrambled eggs, or anything else. They have no harmful propellants or emulsifiers. They're making healthy cooking and eating an absolute breeze, which is exactly what I need with 3 kids and a husband who barely cooks. Okay, breakfast and maybe one other meal a week.
Thank you for that. All you got to do to get our special discount is head to chosenfoods.com/IGNTD Ignited and use the promo code Ignited50 during checkout for 50% off your order, people.
That is a lot of discount for some amazing, amazing oils.
Get some Chosen Foods. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ignited podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are so happy to have you tune in today. We have one of our really, really good friends here, Deepika Chopra, that we're going to be talking to in, 15 minutes?
Yep.
15 minutes, something like that. I wanted to acknowledge, as we've been known to do here in the last few weeks, our fan of the week. And the fan of the week this week is CQ Moore. And her review and 5-star rating is a little long. So she said, "So Ignited is amazing. I've been a podcast dabbler for years. And with every other podcast, except Serial, because of course, I totally second that, by the way, I've eventually faded out of listening. Sometimes I come back, mostly I don't. But Ignited is something I look forward to every week. I've listened to every episode since day one, and each one provides validation, connection, laughs, information, and expansion. This podcast helps me grow as a coach, a wife, a lover, a yoga teacher, a friend, a speaker, a writer, and a human. I've assigned episodes to clients as homework, shared them on my social media, and my friends. Highly recommended to everyone who's open to growth and thinking about life differently. Sophie and Adi, thank you for your light, your truth, and your willingness to show up." Man.
Beautiful.
I know I say this every once in a while, but one of these makes all the work we put into this thing worth it. So thank you so much, CQ Moore. If you're listening right now, don't forget, just take a screenshot of this, share it. Tag me, Sophie, and Ignited, and hopefully we'll be able to feature you on one of these.
Yes.
We love the input from you guys. We really, really do. So I feel like this episode is about being unconventional. Mm-hmm. Like starting off in a way that is just kind of run of the middle of the road, and then taking that little turn and going like, I wonder what's over here, and finding yourself in a completely different place years down the line in your life that you weren't expecting.
Absolutely. On a, not smaller scale, I guess it's the same idea, but I got into nutrition at UCLA and I took a nutrition course, and 3 weeks into it, I walked out because they were promoting the pyramid eating.
This is like the old school. This is before Obama's pyramid.
Yeah. It was horrible.
What was it, like grains at the bottom?
Tons of meat, dairy, like for dairy to even be on the pyramid is like what? But anyway, to me then segueing into owning my own superfood company, knee deep in nutrition, raw foods. It's just so cool to see like what, if you would have told me when I was 19 at UCLA or 20, that I was going to be a raw food coach, a raw food chef, right, own my own superfood company, and help people heal through intuition for food. Like talk about going down a different path.
Yeah.
And it all sparked from that one feeling like I really am interested in food. Food fascinates me. Okay, I'm going to take this nutrition course. Oh, that's not my
not that kind of food.
That's not my philosophy.
Not your philosophy. So you had to go create your own philosophy.
Exactly.
mic drop. Can we just end on this?
Yep. Bye.
Wow, that's so cool. I love how that comes full circle. And you worked at a juice bar. Like I remember when you worked, I mean, we were broken up for when you started working at Real Raw Live. Shout out to that.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, it's closed now. But I remember you were so heads over heels in love with the stuff you were learning there on a daily basis.
Oh yeah. I was so fascinated and inspired and just fell in love with superfoods and raw foods and vegetables and just juicing them and smoothieing them and just all the things. And I mean, I was 20 and now I'm 34 and I was doing superfoods before superfoods were a thing.
But that's how I know, that's how I tell my clients, that's how I know that you're on the right path, is when you find something that you're into, you don't want to go to sleep the same time at night.
Right.
You want to wake up early and go do that shit.
I mean, 14 years later, what I want to do in life is run Philosophie and help people feel better.
Right.
14 years later, and I'm not even paid by Philosophy.
Oh, like, I started this 18 years ago or 17 years ago doing research for essentially, well, free for tuition.
At UCLA.
At Dennis Fisher's, at Cal State Long Beach. At Dennis Fisher's lab, working like a racehorse just for essentially almost no money.
Yeah.
Because I loved it. And now it drives me. And I feel like a lot of people have given up on that. A lot of people kind of think to themselves, well, I haven't found it yet, so I can't find it. And I really want to reinforce for people that part of it is perspective, but part of it is about owning your truth and saying to the people around you.
You might actually already be doing, like, have this thing in your life. And your passion and your dharma might actually already be in your existence and in your everyday life or once in a while. And you just need to figure out and kind of tap into and tune into the fact that that could be the thing for you. And it might not make money right away and it might not ever make money, but having something you're that passionate about, you gotta just run with that.
Yeah. I mean, you hear the stories of people who just did not give up, kind of chasing that passion. You know, everybody has the romanticized idea of being a painter or a writer or whatever. Pick your favorite.
Candlestick maker.
A candlestick maker. Mm-hmm. Yes, I don't have a good example for a candlestick maker who's made it big, but they exist, right? Like, there are the people who have done it. And, I think of kind of like J.K. Rowling, obviously, is like one of the biggest example that comes up is, Harry Potter is now literally the most bought series of books on the face of the earth ever. And that woman was living out of her car because her manuscripts were rejected so many times. She had almost given up on publishing.
That's crazy.
And you hear about these things and we over-romanticize the fucking concept, but like you said...
You gotta hustle.
Well, you gotta hustle, but also you...
Figure out what that thing is.
You feel it. Like when you feel it, it drives you. Sometimes you get tired of it. And of course, you can get tired of things. That's okay. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about listen to that inner voice that is telling you this is the thing. This is what I love doing. And if you haven't found it yet, all good. Keep going with life, but keep seeking, keep searching.
Keep asking yourself.
I always tell people if it's not part of your work, that can also be okay. I know some people who work to support themselves and find that passion in their extracurricular volunteer activities, whatever that is.
For sure.
But make sure you find passion.
Yeah.
Deepika is a good example of this because she started kind of like in my field in psychology in the middle of the road. And she just found, kind of like I did, and with all the talks and all the stuff that I've done now about the stigmatization and the labels, and she went deep, right? Like she worked in some of the harder, dually diagnosed, heavy duty psychiatric care kind of settings. And even there, the overburden of labeling people and stigmatizing them and expectations and looking at pathology, right? Like making everybody sick so that you can heal them instead of helping people take care of themselves on a regular basis. And so she started veering off and finding her own thing. And now she's got this kind of positivity doctor and talking about this way of being, how do you inspire people, which aligns so well with the concept around Ignited.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? If it's not out there already, create it, make it up, make up the rules. Things are different now than they were, 20 years ago even.
Yeah.
People do what they want to do. And if you don't live in LA or New York, where that's already the common everyday thing, I mean, no one in LA or New York works a 9 to 5, like especially LA, but make it up. if when you were a kid, if you would have visited LA and seen all these people just out like on the freeways at 12:30, like you'd be like, what are all these people I want that job. Like,
I know, totally. Yeah, we talked about that last week. It's funny too. It's you were talking about make it up, and it reminds me of this quote. I think it's Henry Ford. I don't remember who I heard it from. Somebody's talk just recently, maybe even Russell Brunson or somebody like that. But it was Henry Ford saying, if I would have asked the people what they wanted, they would have said they want a faster horse. Mm-hmm. You might be inspired to do something that isn't really technically something people identify as a real pursuit right now, right? And I think what you're saying is, if it feels like a calling, dive in, lean into it, and find how you can get it done. We definitely live in a world where the options are way more open than they ever have been before.
Absolutely.
There's
so many more resources, no matter where you live. There's online courses.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened to me when alternatives closed, right? I had these 3 months off. I don't even know how long it had been since I had 3 months to just sit around and think of what I wanted to do.
Alternatives was Adie's rehab that he was doing for 5 years in Beverly Hills, and then he closed it, and he was like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And we made it up together.
Yeah.
We just made it up. Like,
just kind of sat around and thought of ideas, and it's really empowering. It's empowering to, for some of you listening right now who feel like you're stuck, because I feel like that's what will be really good in this episode, is if you feel like you're stuck, you don't really know what to do next. The idea, giving yourself permission to open up your mind and to go, well, what the fuck do I want? Like, how many people listening right now have lived a life where they've always been doing what the next step was, what they were told the next thing to do, or what they thought they had to do, and never really stopped, or at least haven't in a long time stopped to think to themselves, wait, hold on, what actually excites me and what do I want out of life? And I think even if it's just a mind exercise for you, to reconnect back to that can give you a spark. And again, that's what Ignited is all about, is giving you a spark.
I sent out, so every Monday now, I've sent out 5 newsletters on Mondays. So if you want to go to my website, thephilosophy.com, and hit subscribe on the bottom.
Or you give away like a 5 recipe thing too, and you can get on this newsletter as well, right?
Absolutely. So get on my newsletter, subscribe, and you will get on Mondays the Magical Monday email. And in the most recent one, it was all about getting unstuck. So the theme was so the theme of the week was to get unstuck. In what ways do you keep yourself from moving forward? And I'm going to share with you. So pause this now if you don't have a journal near you or a piece of paper. I'm going to just read aloud.
Well, don't pause now. Hold on for 30 seconds and then pause.
So I'm going to just share the journal prompts, and then you can come back to this later, or maybe just stop and pause after these prompts are read and just get yourself unstuck. Yeah. Start to flow and journal.
I can't wait.
So the first one was, in what area of my life do I feel stagnant? So in what area of my life do I feel stagnant? And my thing is with journaling is you just put pen to paper. There's no rules. You can set a timer for 5 minutes if you want to, just so you know that there's an end. But typically that means that you're going to work much longer than that, and just enjoy it. Just, there's no rules. No one is seeing this.
I love it. And I have an adjunct to this. Is that the prompt?
No, there's a couple.
Oh, cool. Go for it.
So number 1 was, in what areas of my life do I feel stagnant? Number 2, what does being stagnant feel like?
Like in your body?
In your body. What does it feel like to be stagnant?
So good.
Number 3, what does it feel like to be free? So what does it feel like in your body to be free? And number 4, what stories have I been stuck in from the past that hold me from taking action or changing in the now? So those are the 4 questions that I asked. And every week I have different journal prompts and different themes.
Definitely go and get yourself on this newsletter.
Yeah.
And as an aside to this, if you go to ignited.com and you sign up to that list, I give you guys the Wheel of Life that I did for Ignited.
I love the Wheel of Life.
So the Wheel of Life normally comes with 8 slices, but because of all the work that I've done over the last decade, I added 2 more slices to it. And so it's a 10-slice Wheel of Life. It's a little different than what you'll find regularly online. And I think if you find yourself struggling with the first question in Sophie's journal prompt, if you go there and get that download, it'll ask you a question about ranking 10 areas of your life. And you might be able to identify an area of your life that you're stuck in that you didn't even think about.
And tag us in it. We want to see you doing the work.
Totally.
We love encouraging the work being done. We love doing it ourselves. We're like work addicts when it comes to, in the most beautiful sense of the word, like we love to dig in and do the nitty gritty work so that we can move forward in whatever area of our life we're feeling stuck or stagnant.
And I even don't want to have like a negative connotation to stuck or stagnant in this sense. You know?
It's just a natural progression. It's a natural part of life is like you flow and then you ebb and then you flow. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah, we kind of forget. Sometimes we just stop paying attention to a part of our life and we forgot that we haven't paid attention to it in a long time because it's out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. Once
you put attention back on it, energy flows back into it and it'll improve. So that's a really, really fun exercise. And I really want to encourage everybody, you know, make life the sort of experience where you actually are curious about what areas you're stuck in and what you can improve in instead of being afraid of those things and running away from them.
Yep.
If you can get into a habit where you do this sort of analysis of yourself
and you
periodically,
look forward to it.
It just makes
I look forward to it. I miss it when I don't do it enough.
Yeah, it just makes life better all the time. So today's relationship tip of the week is really connected to this, and it is about allowing yourself to find your own path and respecting your partner and their search of their own path. Because sometimes what we find, again, I see this in a lot of the couples that I've worked with, that you've worked with me. One partner gets scared that their other person, their loved one, will develop, outgrow them, etc. Newsflash for all of you, that only really happens if you somehow run counter or try to interfere with their growth. If you're the person who's helping support their growth and help hold their hand and be there for them as they become their best selves, that's what true partnership is about.
Absolutely. And you're going to grow because of it. Your partnership's going to grow. If you aren't afraid of your partner shining and growing and expanding, it's only going to do wonders for your relationship as a whole and will hopefully inspire you to do the same in areas of your life.
Yep. Awesome. So that is the tip. In terms of ignited work, again, don't forget, go to Sophie's thephilosophy.com, get that newsletter so that you can get the prompts and get all the amazing stuff that she sends out every Monday and every Friday.
Yep. Monday is the motivation for your week. And then Friday is a recap of all the exciting things going on with Philosophie. So blog posts that we've written, recipes, superfoods, what's on sale, what's happening.
Awesome pictures of Sophie and products, fun, amazing smoothies that you guys make. And
it's stuff that you won't find necessarily on Instagram. It's like one step further.
Yeah. And go to ignited.com, get on that so that you can get the Wheel of Life assessment. That's probably good enough for this week. That's enough homework for this week.
It's enough homework for this week. Let us know, tag us in ignited.me for Instagram and just send us a text. And if you want it to be a private DM, if you don't want us to share your photos, maybe it's a journal prompt and you want to send it to us, and just send us a DM and just say, this is private. Please don't share this. If you don't care, then just send it and tag us, and then we'll be sure to share it.
Hallelujah. Thank you all. We'll see you on the flip side. Wait for Deepika Chopra.
Bye. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophie Superfoods. The Philosophie offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophie fixes all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophie superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
Hello and welcome back to this part, the conversation component. Is that okay to say component?
Yeah, component. I like that.
The conversation component
Very proper.
of the Ignited podcast. I love this part because we get to introduce our friends and people that we are connected to and bring that
People who ignite
passion.
us.
Yeah, bring that passion from our life to other people. And I think today is going to be an amazing example of that as we have Dr. Deepika Chopra on here today. And, you know, we're all about positivity. We're all about bringing purpose and passion and into people's lives and helping them overcome. And that's kind of your jam.
Hi.
It's kind of what you do for, you know, like a living.
Yes, exactly.
Do you want to introduce yourself to our peeps?
Sure. Hi, peeps. I'm Dr. Deepika Chopra. You can just call me Deepika. I am an optimism doctor and a visual imagery expert. And I work with clients and corporations globally to increase what I like to call a personal optimism factor and help people reach their highest selves.
Yes, please. So I think a lot of people have heard of the concept of optimism. And so I want to get into what an optimism doctor is. But tell us more about visual imagery and your expertise in that.
So maybe it's also just because we are sitting here in Los Angeles, but I feel like most every person has had one way or another a visualization experience, whether it's like at the end of a yoga class or they've gone to like a workshop, or people have definitely heard of this idea of visualization. But what I think a lot of people don't know is that there's actually a science behind it. And I've studied sort of the evidence-based, science-backed research behind this idea of visualization. And there's certain tools that you can use to enhance the visualization and make it more successful. Like, for example, sometimes you want to use third person in your visual imagery. Sometimes you want to use first person. And I think that a lot of people aren't really aware of these sort of like nuances. And there's actually research behind this. And a lot of it originally comes from sports psychology. And also, one of my favorite things ever is I researched the relationship between color and emotion, and using color in my visual imageries as a tool is like my favorite thing ever.
Okay, so we're going to dig in because first person, third person, and color, let's step back even one step farther. And what are we talking about? So yes, a lot of people have experienced visualization, but some people haven't.
Right. Okay.
What are we talking about?
So, and I actually like to call it sensory-based visual imagery and not just visualization. And I know that sounds a little like nerdy, but actually at the heart of everything, I'm just like a brain nerd.
A nerd. Yeah. So, you know, it's okay to be nerdy.
Yeah, I fully accept it. Basically, I like to call it sensory-based visual imagery because it's this idea of imagining something but utilizing all of your senses. And the
kind
more,
of immersing yourself,
yes,
right?
Yes, immersing yourself. And it's super powerful because our brain actually doesn't really know the difference between when we're imagining doing something and when we're actually doing it. So we have these things called mirror neurons and they fire. It's like when someone is learning a routine. I don't know, they're on like Dancing with the Stars or something.
Like us last week.
Yeah, exactly. Like the two of you last week.
Yeah.
If you are going through a routine or even a speech in public speaking, a lot of people, or in sports psychology, golf is a huge, like a lot of the research on this has come from actually golf. But going through the motions imaginatively in your brain, seeing yourself doing something that you're about to do, our brains already fire these mirror neurons. And the next time we do it in real life, it thinks we've already done it and it kind of gives us a head start. So same with sort of practicing or imagining scenarios that are going to happen. So a lot of times I work with people pre-surgery. That's how I started, actually, this whole thing. I was doing a fellowship at UCLA and I was working with cancer patients. I was a psycho-oncologist for 3 years at UCLA, and they were amazing and let me sort of practice these like innovative kind of strategies that I was hoping to I was just coming up with these things and doing research that wasn't really widely accepted at the time in our field. I say our because you're in my field.
Yeah.
And now they are, because all these practices of visualization and optimism and happiness are really big right now. And it's amazing.
Interesting, right? Because people have actually been using techniques like this for phobias and anxieties for a while from the exposure standpoint.
Exactly.
But in exposure, it was about extinction.
Yep.
And it was more about, hey, I can get desensitized to this thing that I'm scared of or creates anxiety in me by visualizing it, which is the same thing we're talking about, right? Why does that even work?
Right.
Because if I'm scared of spiders, just closing my eyes and really thinking of putting myself in a room with a spider freaks me out because my brain is almost being fooled into thinking that I'm in a room with a spider. And then you get gradually more and more
And you
intense.
pair those with, more relaxing type of... yes.
To be able to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and all that
I love
stuff.
that you brought that up, because my first ever clinical experience in psychology, before I even started my doctorate program, I worked with OCD patients at UCLA. And the very first thing that as a volunteer, the very first thing that I did was exposure therapy.
Oh, interesting.
And it was so the opposite and counterintuitive of what you would think as a human to do with someone.
Yeah, people look at you
suffering.
Like, I don't want to fucking imagine that.
Yes.
That's the farthest thing I want to get from. And
Exactly.
you have to kind of tell them, I get it. And I talk to people about this all the time. But if we don't get you used to this thing, you're going to run away from it for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And it was this whole idea where my supervisors were like, it's exactly the opposite of what you would do with someone, another human sitting with them that's freaking out. Like, you need to put them through their worst case scenario, like tell their worst case story, which is so interesting because now what I do is help people tell their best stories.
I know. That's what I love about this. So I do this with my clients, and I took it. I wasn't aware of visualization kind of techniques, but when I opened up a rehab, one of the things I brought in was this visualization exercise. And I said, look, people are doing it for phobias. Let's do it for triggers. So that was one thing about addiction triggers and desensitizing people to their triggers. But now what I do with people is I have them practice in their head the thing that they're most scared of, like going to a bar and sitting and having dinner with somebody. And we walk through, like, play that movie for me and write a story out and really create the best version of what that night looks like. Why? Because guess what? Now you have to figure out what the best version of that looks like, and your brain had to practice it in your head.
Absolutely.
And next time when you go to a restaurant and you're sitting with your friend and there's a bar, you've already acted this out in your head. And so you're that much more likely to be able to act it out in reality.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think that it's interesting to come from like a clinical background, because there's certain scenarios where some of the things that I do right now wouldn't work. Like, the stuff that I'm talking about right now, or we're talking about these like best case stories, I wouldn't use that with an OCD patient. And I don't practice in that way anymore.
Sure.
But I think it's really interesting to see, even within your own career and personally, like the evolving. And I think that like I'm stronger as what I'm doing now because I have this like clinical background.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Because you just mentioned that. Don't you feel sometimes, this is controversial, but don't you feel sometimes like, especially in academic or stereotypical clinical settings, like we get a little too wrapped up in what an OCD patient is and
labeling them and sort of like, putting them in this box.
Yeah, because even within OCD patients, there's an entire range
spectrum
of severities.
Yes.
So much so that some of them are just kind of a little obsessive compulsive broadly, or have
me.
Yeah, or like me. Have interrupting thoughts, have an inability to focus sometimes, but then hyper focus at other times, which feels obsessive. Whereas, look, other people have really dysregulated systems that they are unable to escape from for days, weeks, years. And that feels different and it presents different clinically. But it's like you throw somebody into this OCD box, and I feel like the techniques you're talking about right now are actually really useful for a lot of these people, because for decades, maybe literally since they were kids, nobody has actually asked them, what does amazing look like? Everybody has always said, well, how do we stop you from doing all this negative stuff that is impacting your life? And especially if you have OCD tendencies, that means all you're thinking about is all the negative shit that is impacting your life.
Right.
You're constantly, those interruptive, anxiety-prone thoughts are constantly in the forefront of your brain. Whereas if somebody said, well, what does an amazing day look like? Let's walk through that.
Yeah.
And if you can explain that and get practice and kind of biasing your cognition, right? Biasing the way you think a little towards that, then maybe it moves away a bit from the anxiety-prone approach that you had.
I mean, so much of what you're saying, like, there's so much I want to say about everything you just said.
Say everything.
I don't even know where to start.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever.
The first part that you were talking about, again, I'm veering on like this controversial thing right now too, but I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah.
And it's my own experience. I didn't fall in love, unfortunately, with traditional psychology. I found it, in my experience, to be super limiting, very antiquated. And about like 6 years ago or so, I stepped away from traditional psychology. And I don't even call myself a psychologist anymore. That's why I call myself an optimism doctor. But I did see, especially in the beginning, when working with the OCD patients at UCLA, that traditional psychotherapy practices, for me, cognitive behavioral, that's my like choice for sure, really did work. And these exposure therapies like really worked. And I'm talking about, we were at UCLA and I was working with a very severe population.
Yeah.
So some of the other stuff, like absolutely, what I didn't love about traditional psychology is on the sort of like main idea of psychology and the founding psychotherapy, like especially the Freudian type stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's based on the past and everything's based on negativity. And I just I didn't understand how I was helping someone. I was just giving them...
It's so based on pathology, right?
So based on pathology. And I didn't understand, like, these people that I was seeing already had so much negative thought and were based on negativity. And I was just giving them another hour every single week to sort of like divulge in it more. And I felt like an enabler. So it started making me question. And it went against sort of like my framework of how I was raised. My father was like a huge influence upon me my whole life. And I think like looking back now, I realize he was like a natural manifester, but he didn't even know he was doing it. You know, like he would tell me these stories of growing up in India and he'd like, you know, he didn't have much and he would collect other people that would travel to Europe. They're like car magazines and he'd cut out little cars from them and put them in a notebook and he'd carry it with him every day. And he'd say, one day I'm going to own these cars. I love cars. And he has this huge car collection now. And it was hard work. He didn't ask the universe for this. You know, It was like literally he just focused in on something that he dreamt of and really wanted. And he worked every single day towards that value and never really like let it go out of his mind. And he sort of operates like that all the time. And it was something I think just by like osmosis that I was exposed to. And so I couldn't not apply that to grad school. And I was like, wait a second, exactly what you were saying. I was like, I don't feel like I'm giving these people any sort of like sense of mastery. I don't feel like I'm really changing their lives. And like, yes, we sat here and we talked about something that's not working, but how come I'm not giving them like a way of working towards something that does work? So I sort of started looking into different practices, and really the basis of a lot of it came from cognitive behavioral strategies. I had an awesome supervisor at Cedars. I did a double postdoc fellowship at Cedars and UCLA, and both places...
You overachiever.
No, both places were... I wanted to be at both. Kind of like we were talking about before. Yeah. I wanted to be in two different places at the same time. So I made it work. And both places, I have to say, awesome, amazing places in Los Angeles that allowed me really to sort of try this like innovative, like new therapy that I had a great supervisor at Cedars too, who was working on this idea called future directed therapy. And it sort of made way more sense to me than anything else. And it was natural to me. And I was already in the process of writing a dissertation on basically optimism and evidence-based manifestation and imagery. And so I started utilizing those practices, and I was even using them with cancer patients. And that's pretty controversial to talk just about optimism with cancer patients.
Yeah.
And visual imagery. So a lot of my initial visual imagery was very medical based, and it would be literally going through an hour super specific sensory-based visual imagery with people pre-chemotherapy or pre-breast cancer surgery. And then like, being in LA, it became actors before auditions. And then it became like business, and huge corporations before meeting certain goals, or public speakers, like very, people speaking in large environments. So it became this like idea of like anticipatory anxiety, or like an event that you could think goes one way or another way, and why not? It's sort of like the same thing. Like I was working with a 19-year-old patient once, and he's a cancer patient. And I was like, he was a soccer player. I said, every Sunday he plays a game. Do you ever go into your soccer game on a Sunday being like, I'm totally going to lose? He doesn't.
Right,
Because
totally.
like if he went in on a Wednesday thinking I'm going to lose that game on Sunday, there's very little chance he's going to do anything or have any motivation to actually like work hard or practice. Our brains are so efficient. They work, most of the time they're trying to work for us, but a lot of times, if we don't know how to use them correctly, they work against us. And it's so efficient. Our brains won't do anything that we actually don't believe is going to happen in the future.
That's such a, it's so interesting, because that's such a powerful statement just by itself that people just take for granted, right? We get fed so much negative information all the time, and we just expect that we'll be fine with all of it. Whereas you wouldn't do that to your body. Right?
So true.
Like if somebody just, I don't know how many people listening right now, imagine that if you ate donuts for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner, and then when you woke up in the middle of the night and like went to the bathroom to pee, you just stuff some more donuts down your throat, you'd feel really good on a regular basis, right? You'd feel shitty you'd feel good for a handful of moments, right, as you're kind of feeding into it, and then progressively feel worse and worse and worse. And as you load yourself up with more of that junk food, your body would just start deteriorating. And yet we allow ourselves to do that all the time. I feel like many people have this bias where the vast majority of the time, the conversation you're having with yourself internally is about all the things you don't have, and all the things you're missing, and all the ways that everybody around you is doing better than you, or has more friends than you, or is more popular, or has more money, or a nicer car. And
especially right now with this
with social media.
But it's so interesting because from an evolutionary standpoint, we're actually more prone to be pessimistic. But we live in a time right now where, of course, we still have predators. We can name a few.
We're more prone to be we're more prone to pay attention to punishments, right? Like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you've done this work focusing on this, and I took the classes, but it wasn't what I've made my life about in the last 10 years. It's not like cavemen were sitting around saying to themselves, we're not going to catch buffalo when we go out today. But what you're saying is your brain is really programmed to say, hey, this is a dangerous area, don't go there. Or
so to imagine worst case scenarios because they protected us.
Worst case scenario, exactly.
But right now we live in this time where like that's actually not, it's not necessary for survival. It's actually kind of the opposite. And so I like to think of it as like this idea of optimism is really a muscle. We all possess the ability to be more optimistic. We just need to find more ways to work this muscle out. And exactly like what you were talking about, we now realize we're at a place where I think we're like consciously evolved on the idea that we need to take care of our bodies. What you put in is like what you get. And most of us think about, maybe not all do. I'm actually really bad at exercising, but we think about exercising. We know like what we feed ourselves and what we eat, what we drink. And if we exercise, it's going to sort of like the output is going to show us. Yeah. And we think that's important. But what we don't remember is that thoughts, I think, in my opinion, thoughts are our greatest, most valuable currency. And what people don't understand is, or they don't like, I remember when I like learned this concept, I was like, my mind was blown. It was so simple, but I still didn't like fully, fathom it or get it. That like we can actually choose the thoughts that we put into our brain. Our brain has a limited capacity of attention. We think it's just like, we can think about everything and we don't have control over it. I hear that so many times with my clients, right? Like I just thought that.
It's just like I had no control. It's just like the other things. It's just like getting onto that yoga mat. It's just like feeding your body by filling your fridge and your pantry with healthy foods.
Yeah.
Why? Because then you're more likely to grab the healthier thing.
Right.
Same thing goes for your thoughts. Same thing goes with the way you speak to yourself.
Oh, that's huge.
It's
Exactly. And that's sort of the premise of when I had that shift in my clinical practice of like, I want to help people understand more that their brains have this limited capacity and their thoughts are really valuable. And how can I help them like gather more valuable, positive, work for you thoughts and stuff those in their brain to use rather than sort of like go through the motions. And it's sort of like when you drive every day the same route to work.
Exactly.
So many of us, we don't even know how we got there. It happens all the time. Like, I'm like, I have no idea how I got here. I just got here because we act on automatic. And that's another like thing that our brain does for us that's actually a good thing. It's efficiency. If we do something enough, our brain doesn't really need to work hard to do that anymore. And so it just like allows us to do that.
Yeah.
So we have to break some of those patterns that aren't working for us and replace some of those negative automatic patterns with more positive ones. And I am just a firm believer of like, I have to put it out there. Optimism is not about people being positive all the time. That, again, may be controversial to say, especially in like today's day and age, the trends of today. But, being positive all the time is actually impossible and it's not human. I am a strong believer of experiencing the wide range of emotions. I mean, I was a blundering mess before coming here right now. I was telling Sophie, I cried in my car. It was positive crying. It was tears of happiness. Today's my anniversary, my 3-year wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
And thank you. And we've been together for 7 years, married for 3. And this whole last year, we have a 15-month-old child. I just feel like I was listening to one of our songs when we first started dating, and this flood of like, wow, I appreciate my partner so much. And I do not tell him enough. I more tell him the things that like, I'm annoyed by, especially in this last year, or that he's not doing and I'm doing too much of because I'm the mom and, blah, blah, blah. He
could never understand.
No, he can never understand.
Yeah.
I carried, I breastfed, the last, like no matter how involved he is, like the
Never
buck
enough.
stops at me when it's decision time for our son. And I just had this like wave of like so many emotions when I came here. And I was thinking like, whoa, literally my first thought was judgment. Like, Deepika, hold it together. Like if someone saw you right now, the face you're making of like part of me wanted to like run over to my husband's office, lock the door and rip his clothes off because I was feeling like this like animalistic,
Drawing,
yeah. And then part of me was like crying these tears of like joy and gratitude. And then I was feeling like a little guilt for like how much I don't tell him.
And like sadness.
All of that. And
Yeah.
I was like, if someone saw me right now, they think you're crazy. And then I was like, wait a second, this is beautiful.
Right.
Like I just went through so many different emotions and I could have those emotions. They were regulated and then I could like shut the door, come here and actually like find something to appreciate about that.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent on don't dull any of your emotions, but it's kind of like what you were saying before. I don't have to remind people of the negativities. They're all around us. We're very prone to being aware of them. But what I do have to remind people about is there's also really amazing things happening every single day around us, within us, for us. And we just don't spend enough or as much time on those things.
Totally.
And why not?
And it's not only do we not spend enough time on them, there are so many opportunities to dull the way that we feel. And I was thinking at the beginning when you started talking about that part of, right, it's not all positive and we have a limited amount of attention to pay to pay in the world, that I actively remember cutting out. So my favorite music in high school and beginning of college and actually through college was heavy industrial punk, depressing electronica, like, 9 Inch Nails was like my favorite band kind of growing up. And I remember
I love 9 Inch Nails.
Still love the music, but I got to tell you,
Shout out to Trent.
I know. Trent, if you're listening, hit me up. One of the few people I still want to meet in my life. But I got to tell you, I eliminate most of that from my daily behavior. Like now it's a conscious decision when I say, you know what, I want to sink into that way of being a little bit. Because what I realized is the power that has over me is it brings me back to the way I used to feel back then, which was I felt out of sorts. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt depressed a lot of times. I felt anxious about the way I related to other people and they related to me. I felt lonely and like I was going to be alone forever. I felt misunderstood. And when I attached to the music, I went right back to feeling that way. And so sometimes I want to sink into that and celebrate it, but all other times I eliminate the hell out of it because
you're being intentional about what you expose yourself to, because you have learned and understand that stimuli around us like really counts. And like for
environmental
me
influence.
And music, huge. I mean, for me driving here, the reason that all happened, it was kind of the opposite effect.
That's why with the song.
Right. It was this song, and like, it's funny, but like what we attack, it's so personal because for me, I'm a pretty positive person, but as well, I have my dips and I work really, I might be an optimism doctor, but I also like struggle with how to increase my own optimism. And I know my like sort of Achilles, is it called Achilles heel or tendon?
Achilles heel.
Whatever. I know mine's like medical stuff. For me, I could be the most optimistic person in the world about so many things. But when it comes to medical things, I just think I'm like fucked. I'm like, oh no, if this like bad thing's gonna happen, like, or this, like you have like 15% chance of like this happening. I'm like, I'm the one, this is me, it's gonna happen to me.
Do you think that's because of the exposure when you were working with people who were terminal a lot?
You know, it's so interesting. I've tried to sort of meditate and like sort of internalize and like, why do I have this? I think it's just part of who I am from sort of the start. I think maybe I've had a lot of these like really random medical like anomalies, nothing like too severe or anything. But even in my pregnancy, I had this thing called hyperemesis gravidarum where I threw up about 30 times a day until the day I delivered. I mean, I hemorrhaged my vocal cords from throwing up so much. And like, it's very like less than 2% of pregnant women actually get it and have it the entire time. I also ended up with preeclampsia out of nowhere. And then like also this like other random like blood clotting thing. Like no one could explain any of it. I have no genetic like predisposition to it. Like I just have these things. And I think it's interesting, but it's like this part of my like existence and world that I need to work on, because I just keep, and this is what we do as humans, I keep collecting evidence to support the fact that like, yep, medically I'm just pretty unlucky.
Yeah.
And I keep, and so I have to like
confirmation bias, right?
But what's so interesting is recently I was on a trip with my husband, like first time leaving baby. I was out in the Hamptons for work. I was speaking on a panel and my husband came with me and it was lovely. 3 quick nights. Last day I was there, flew off my bike, flew over the handlebars, total freak accident.
Right.
I mean, I was just on this beautiful, calm street, but my tire got caught in a pothole, literally split my chin open and broke my jaw.
I remember you were telling me when you first told the story, in that moment, like a split second before that, you were thinking to yourself, what an ideal, perfect experience.
I literally said that to my husband, babe, this is the most beautiful place. This is my favorite part of the whole trip. Like we were literally on the most beautiful street probably in the United States called Lily Pond Lane. I mean, it even sounds idyllic.
It does sound, I want to be there right now.
Yeah, it was amazing. I do too, but not on a bike.
No.
And please, everyone wear helmets. But
I told this story to my kids. I told them, they were like, we don't want to wear helmets. I told our neighbor's kid who was like, I'm not wearing a helmet. I was like, you want to hear the story?
Yeah. And you know what is so funny to me? I've had to work hard, on being optimistic in a lot of different ways. But this particular thing that happened, I don't know. I felt so, all I could think about after it was I was so grateful that nothing worse happened. And I broke my jaw, but like I didn't hit my head. My brain was intact. I was not wearing a helmet. Like I didn't need major surgery. Yeah, I couldn't chew for 6 weeks. That's pretty brutal. But I just kept thinking how it could have been worse. Yeah. And I was so lucky that like I got to heal the way I did, and it could have been worse. Like it wasn't hard for me to actually focus on that.
Yeah, that's
and so
great.
Maybe I look at that now, and maybe just as I'm talking, I have this like uncovering like great experience where I'm like, oh, maybe I can use that as my evidence against sort of, sure, I could take that same situation and be like, hey, I'm so medically unlucky. I broke my jaw. Who breaks their jaw on a random like idyllic bike ride with their husband in the Hamptons?
But other people fall on the back of their head and lose their sight.
Or I could look at it like I flew off my bike and I didn't need major surgery. I'm pretty much fine. Yeah, I couldn't shoot for 6 weeks, but I healed okay. My kid's okay. I'm okay. I came back and like, look, I'm back to normal now.
Look, if you walked in here on 2 legs and you drove a car with your own hands, I mean, if you want to talk about evidence that you are functioning well physically, there's actually 100 times more evidence for that than anything unlucky. But you're right. I think, again, I talk a lot about confirmation bias in the work. I talk about it in the book. We fall into these traps where, your brain organizes things based on the way you believe them. So if you believe that you are medically unlucky, you will find more evidence for that over and over and over. And all we have to do is start finding, and I think that's what you're doing in this moment right now, which is really cool.
Yeah.
All we have to do is start finding a handful of pieces of evidence that go contrary to our belief, and our brain will readjust its focus.
That is exactly what I do with people. And that's the premise of the type of work that I do. It's challenging these thoughts that we don't even know we have because they've been on automatic for so long. And you can call it manifestation. You can call it the law of attraction. You can call it neuroscience. I like to look at it from all of the above.
Sure.
I believe in all of the above. I just always need to add the scientific piece for myself. And that's part of my practice. But that's exactly what it is. So it's so interesting that as a practitioner, you can sort of utilize these experiences that you're having in real time to sort of increase being humble and working with other people, but also just we're human too. And so we're just working with other humans, and it's all about just being human in the core of it.
Yeah. And look, it is about being human. I just feel like there's so much focus on negativity.
Yes.
That to be human in this way, to walk, I don't know if you noticed, I was distracted from them. I have a handful of clients that I work really intimately with, to the point where they text me on a regular. It's 24 hours a day. When they need, they text me or whatever, and I respond. Not always phone calls, just sometimes just a
quick
text. And some of these people really struggle, bad cutting behavior. Some of my clients have gone through traumas that most people listening right now would have looked for a way to end their life. And my job is to come into those situations that scare the shit out of most people, and walk into that place and go, you're okay. And we're going to figure this out. And I believe in you. And
maybe that's the first time they've ever even heard that. You could be their only person, and it's your job to help them at some point believe in themselves.
For a lot of these people, their parents didn't do this, right? Their parents.
I get it.
And
not personally, but I've seen exactly.
And I've talked on this podcast about the fact that my family wasn't very emotional, let's say. Okay, so I didn't learn emotional words. I didn't know how to communicate, and the vocabulary wasn't there. And I missed that. I for sure missed that growing up. But my parents loved me and cared for me all the time.
You always felt that.
There was no question in my mind about whether my parents loved me and whether they loved my sister and whether our family was important to everybody. To come from a place where that wasn't even clear sets you up for decades of suffering.
Absolutely.
And when you're saying being human, that's kind of what I feel like is my mission. And it's funny, I was just talking to a friend about this morning. Shout out to Seth. But it was I feel as if when I first started doing this work, it was all about addiction, because that's where I came from. And then I realized, other people with mental health struggles have this same shame component and everything like that. So let me expand to that. And then all of a sudden I'm realizing everybody has this.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of what you were saying before, this idea when we were talking about OCD. The interesting thing about some of the psychological quote unquote disorders that we have, and I put those in quotes.
There's air quotes being done right now, ladies and gentlemen.
You got to see those. The interesting thing is they're all just behaviors and emotions that we have as humans to a different degree. So we can all...
you step over some line, and then somebody decides you have that disorder.
Right.
And then a lot of times, if somebody decided that when you were 12 or 14...
It becomes your belief.
It becomes your belief about who you are. And that's what I'm saying is part of my job, and this is where it's unpopular, because people who are in traditional psychology call some of the things that I do dangerous in that way, because... this person is reaching out to me because, and the client I'm thinking of specifically right now, she's tried everything. She's done every type of therapy. She lives in the UK. She's done every type of therapy. That's not what I serve for her.
Right.
I serve as a hope, as a post that she gets to hold on to for hope and acceptance. And I see that as a higher purpose, because for a lot of the people, it sounds like a lot of people that you've worked with as well, they don't have that yet within themselves. So the positivity, like their confirmation bias is on full on negative.
Yeah.
Everywhere they look is more evidence that they suck, they're idiots, they're weird and hopeless, and nobody loves them and never will. And my job is to like crack a window open that there's some breeze that's going to come in and clean that up.
Totally.
And sometimes that's enough. For some people, that's enough, and other people need a whole slew of additional tools.
Right. And I think like the bottom line is that it's work is super personal because humans are personal. And we all have like, yeah, sure, there's these like very unifying like truths that we all sort of like live by and experience because that's what kind of like our commonality, it makes us human. But what works for us and sort of like our thought patterns and all of that is very personal. And I think that it's important as a practitioner, whoever you are, that you work with people, that you don't just use like blanket one size fits all. And that kind of like brings up a lot of, I write a lot about this idea, and again, kind of controversial topic, especially with what's trendy right now. But like, I write a lot about this topic and I speak a lot about this topic that like affirmations don't always work. And sometimes they can be very detrimental.
Yeah.
And I think that it's this like interesting, you were saying some of the people you were just describing, like how negative maybe their whole life is and their bias. And I feel like a lot of times all they have to be offered is either traditional psychology, where it's very, again, negative focused or past focused and not a lot of sort of like, but what can I do next? And then like this whole other side of cool and trendy, but like quote unquote, again, holistic practices. Some people who are really credentialed and amazing at what they do, but other people just sort of like pop, I don't know what they're called, but like pop wellness experts.
Yeah.
That like just offer sort of like stand in front of a mirror and say, I love myself 10 times. I mean, can you imagine prescribing that to the person you were just describing? Like, that's not going to work.
No, I mean, with somebody like that, the work I need to do and have done and will do is you have to almost uncover for them what is even available. Kind of what can they say in a way that actually connects, because I think you're right. Sometimes if you prescribe, I would never prescribe an affirmation, first of all, at all.
Yeah.
Because it's not my job to know what would work for you. It's my job to help you uncover what that is. And if I make you say something that is that makes you feel like you're not genuine,
right,
and is dissonant to what is going on internally, you're going to feel like a piece of shit liar, lying to yourself in the mirror,
so
which is going to make you distrust the process.
Totally. And they've done a ton of research on this, which is so interesting, that these blanket affirmations, or like these from a lot of these sort of outside, like, I don't even know what to call them, and I feel whatever.
Yeah, whatever. These experts.
Yeah, these quote unquote experts, or people that have just like their credentials is just their own experience. Like, hey, I created this amazing life for myself, so I'm here to create an amazing life for you. That's literally all it's based on.
Sure.
A lot of times these like blanket affirmations actually did the exact opposite, and it increased the amount of shame and fear and anger and depression, and because it was literally the exact opposite of what they truly felt. So I believe in this idea of, if you're going to use an affirmation, I talk about this thing called the 7/10 rule. If you're going to use an affirmation, you have to believe what you're saying at least 7 out of 10. I rate it because I think things need to be like measurable, and we need to like be on the same page. So if you can't get there, there is the awesome power of being neutral, which a lot of people don't talk about enough or sink into. It's either like negative or positive. But like the way to start is really neutral. And when you're ready to go positive, it's the 7/10 rule.
That's awesome.
Happy to talk about that more in future.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about it right now. It reminds me of when I went to see the guy who became our therapist, who recently passed, and we will keep honoring him throughout future episodes here and there. Mark. When I first came to him, where he was working, there was this laminated sheet of positive affirmations. They would hand it to you and say, just pick 3 that you can say right now. And I remember the first time he gave it to me, I looked for, and I'm not exaggerating here, maybe 5 minutes. And I couldn't find 3 that fit. And there are some, and by the way, I work with people who don't even have these, but there were some that stuck. Like, I am smart was something that I'd been told my whole life growing up. So that actually somehow kind of made it through all the bullshit that I've been through. So I had to, there were a handful that I could hold on to, not 7/10, maybe even 9/10 at the time, right?
Good. At least 7/10.
And then, but that would be like 1 or 2 of them. And the problem was they actually didn't serve me in that moment because I knew that. I'd been told I was intelligent since I was 6. And yet I created all this shit in my life and the storm that I created later. So that actually didn't serve me for escaping. And it took for sure weeks, but even months to start allowing other things like I am lovable or, I'm worthy and things of that nature felt so ridiculously foreign that as I'm saying them right now, I can't even connect to how.
It almost makes someone cringe if it's like so
I couldn't say them.
Right.
I could not say them. And so I would never require somebody to say something.
But like how many people that's actually their treatment plan.
Technique, yeah.
Their technique. Because it's like the only thing, which is again why, even though I believe that the field of psychology needs to bump it up and it's like pretty much antiquated in a lot of ways. But like, again, I'm such a promoter or proponent or fan of real credentials and evidence-based and all the work that I've done, even though it made me kind of like do something different. I'm so happy I did, and I wouldn't be in the place I am right now if I didn't. And I hold so much value in my grad school experience and my doctorate and all the like thousands of clinical hours,
right?
Because you need that to work with other people, and like it's not something that should be taken lightly. And I wouldn't have been inspired to do something different if I didn't go through all that and have that. So I'm still like, I believe that people should have more than just a random experience.
Yeah, well, you should have the knowledge of the status quo and the basics and the evidence and everything that got us to this place to be able to speak about where it needs to go from now, right? Just like you need to understand history in order to have a sense of where we're going.
Totally.
Because if you don't, what the things you're proposing, the things you're pushing out there can have no basis in reality. They could just,
and maybe they work for like one person and you had a great experience with that person as a practitioner, but like they may not always work for the next person and the next person. And then you're at this sort of like, oh, holy shit, I'm working with people and their lives and I actually have no idea what I'm doing. And because like for 2 people, it worked what I did for myself. But you have to be able to be like flexible as a practitioner, I think, and meet someone where they're at and have like different tools in your toolbox.
That's our job. That's exactly what I feel like. Yep. My job is, and I tell my clients this all the time, and I love that you just said that because everybody needs tools. Whoever built this townhouse that we're living in right now could have been the most amazing carpenter or the most amazing construction crew. We wouldn't be sitting here if they didn't have hammers and nails and power tools and saws and all those other things that they needed to make the house. Without the tools, the skills are not all that fucking great.
Right.
Right.
And they had to be trained in using the tools.
100%. And so everybody listening right now, the reason we do this is to give tools, right? So when we talk to somebody like you, the 7/10 rule, these ideas of, removing the biases and kind of getting your brain to reprogram towards other ways. And we'll talk about more, I'm sure, as we continue here. The reason we do this is to introduce people to more and more tools because I don't know what's going to work for you.
Right. Exactly.
I have no idea. Not only because I've never met you, even if I would have met you, even if you're sitting here in front of me, I'm not God. I'm not a fortune teller.
Right.
All I can do is say, hey, look at all these tools. I've got a bunch of stuff. Let me talk to you for 15 minutes and try to
and we'll try it out.
And
if this one doesn't work,
thing. Like he or she may not even know. Right. We don't even know always what tools are going to resonate and work. But the idea is, okay, here are all these tools. Let me try them on for a few days, a few hours, a few weeks.
Right.
See what resonates, see what makes shifts in my body and my mind and my psyche, and then we'll go from there.
And exactly. And sometimes you can, just like the therapist that had you pick out those 3, and at first glance, you're like, sure, I can pick out these 3, but like, who cares? Because I already believe them. But he actually had you focus on them. And after a few weeks, you were able to pick out other ones. And that's why it works. And so for me, I'd prefer in the affirmation part, like if someone really doesn't love themselves, and that's like their core belief, and they don't really believe they deserve to be in a positive relationship. Because I see this all the time. People are wanting to quote unquote manifest. I say that again it's so funny, but like I do these a lot because manifest is a funny word right now.
Yeah.
But they want to manifest a lot. One of the most popular things people talk about and ask for right now is they want to manifest a relationship.
Love.
How can I manifest love? Right. And I feel like, I don't even know where I was going with this for a second.
Well,
the affirmation. Yeah. Oh yeah. If someone has a core belief that we figure out that's like, I'm not lovable, I don't deserve to be in a relationship, our brains actually are not going to set forth the executive functioning that they do to start like putting into motion and process ways in which to open yourself up to even seeing another person in front of you. And what I think is like amazing is I'm never going to tell that person, which a lot of people that come to me say, oh, wow, like I, met this life coach and they told me to just like write down, I am lovable, or like say it in front of the mirror before I go to sleep and when I wake up. And obviously like it didn't work. It felt good like in the moment for a second, but then all of a sudden the barrage of emotions that come up that are like, no, I'm not. I'm like,
and
remember
then what
the time
do you do with that?
Right. So I'd rather be like, hey, right now in this moment, like I totally understand that you don't feel lovable and I believe you because that's your feeling and that's your belief. But like, what's something you actually love about yourself? Is there anything you can tell me right now that you like about yourself, specific? Yeah. And like every single person can name at least one thing. And maybe they're like, and this was something I had worked with a client and she was able to tell me, I really like that I'm loyal. And like cool. Yesterday, I, was talking to a friend and I was able to help her through something. And I feel like I am like a loyal person and I always have my friend's back.
Yep.
And of course she could follow that up with like, and I don't feel like anyone has my back. But like the fact that she likes that she's loyal, like let's start there. And I ask her, how much do you actually believe that on a scale of 1 to 10? And she could be like 9. I much prefer to have her say in front of the mirror when she goes to bed at night for the next week, 5 times in the night and in the morning, I love that I'm a loyal person.
Yeah.
Because if you fill your brain with that and it's believable, and I'd rather her fill her brain with that than another thought that's believable that doesn't work for her, she's going to start to be able to see other evidences that prove of why she likes herself.
Yeah.
And so it's this like, it's all about being on this continuum.
I talked to this woman just the other day who was who reached out because of relationship issues, and she said this thing that was so revealing, which was, when a guy's willing to go out with me, the first thought in my head is, what's wrong with him? Because something has taught her that only men who are unworthy, unsuccessful, whatever the story is that goes along with that, would be okay with going on a date with her. Mm-hmm. So immediately, as soon as somebody says yes, she's not interested in them anymore because they said yes to her. And that creates this storm where she feels unloved because anytime that something enters, there's a gap that gets created in her brain about this guy. Well, he can't be that great if he loves me. And so not only does she not love herself, but she turns herself off to any potential relationship because of this belief, this underlying belief. And it's like, well, you can manifest all you want if every single time that somebody becomes interested, you write them off by virtue of them being interested. It's going to keep coming up. It's not going to go away until we understand why that's there. How do we break it down and we alter it?
And we replace it with something else. Yeah. So I just think like the bottom line is there's a lot more work. And I'm really interested in like when people ask for things from the universe, I'm like really interested in like the you in universe. Mm-hmm. So like it's this like sort of spot that I'm in where I really like, for me personally, I love blending the two. Like I grew up, my best friend's mom introduced me to the law of attraction and Abraham Hicks when I was in like middle school. Mm-hmm. And I would like listen to the CDs of her Esther and Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Something about it like really resonated with me, but there were certain things that didn't. Yeah. Like the idea of where Abraham came from.
Yeah. Right.
It was just like, I could just skip over that because I also am someone that like needed the scientific background.
Absolutely.
And as I still lived my life like that.
Well, I think it's like that with anything. It's like that. It's like that for me with religion. Like, it's just like I can't with half of it, but
there's parts of it.
There's parts of it that I can take and actually apply to what I believe to be real. Something that's relatable to me. Something that I really, for the most part, it's just like a bunch of stories that either inspire you or don't.
Right.
If they inspire you to be a better person and live your truth and be like challenge yourself and challenge your edges, then great. Like take those stories and make them affect your life in that way. But it's the same idea.
Exactly. And I feel like it's really, I'm only now understanding after doing the work for this amount of time. And really like, I know it sounds completely out of nowhere, but like becoming a mom for now 15 months, like I'm really now settling into myself as sort of like a human, but also as a optimism doctor, and understanding like what I have to offer and where sort of the blend of how I live my own life like really dictates like what I do in my career and how I help other people. And it's really this like blend of sitting right in this like spot. So funny. I'm taking your little crystals. I'm like sitting right in the spot of like between like crystals and like evidence-based science. Like I'm like at that spot where I'm like, I utilize these like holistic pieces, which are really strong for me. But also like it's as equally important for me to help people understand like the science behind it and why it really works from a brain perspective. And because it's important for me, I can't talk about it without that. Yeah. But also I think it's important for others too.
Yeah, well, that's why like, our podcast, that's like you just defined our relationship. Like that's our two worlds combining. And that's why I
could be your child.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. No,
we go generations deep.
Yeah, you do.
Our guest before this, Trisha, was saying that she was listening to it on the way up, and she was listening to our podcast with Lacey, and she couldn't believe she knows me separately better than she knows you and Adi. And she was saying like, I can't believe how much more Adi talked because I know you as the one. And I was like, because if we're talking to someone, interviewing someone on, crystals, I don't need to talk as much. Like Adi's the one that needs to be the voice of the science-based and of the one that's maybe not fully believing, or, the one that's going to, what's the word?
Challenge?
Yeah, challenge.
Or be curious.
Yeah. Because I'm bringing these guests on because they're already my homies. Yeah. And like, I already have had these conversations.
I think a lot of the people that listen love to hear your perspective on it as well, because it's not exactly the guests. And that's what we call these conversations, not interviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
I just mean like, I've already had all those conversations with these people and I already get it and kind of, aspire or connect on that level. You, on the other hand, are more science-based. And although that you've changed a lot since we've been connected, it's still refreshing, I think, to hear both sides. And that's what we offer is like two sides to the coin, two sides, two perspectives. And at the end, we're both excited and happy. Like something resonates for both of us.
Yeah.
And maybe I get inspired by something more scientific or more psychological, and he gets more inspired by something that's a little more, earthy or elemental or, something that's more woo-woo. And that place we merge is what this podcast is like sharing both sides of the coin.
That's exactly how I describe like what I do.
Yeah.
That's exactly what me as an optimism doctor is. That exactly just puts it right there.
Beautiful.
Rock and roll. So before we get into our 5 questions, which we ask everybody who comes on the podcast,
yay.
I guarantee there are people listening right now who are like, wait, where do I follow this woman? How do I connect with her? What do I do? So tell our people, where do they find you? How do they work with you? What do you have out? We're going to have some really amazing stuff that you and Sophie are putting in the works that I cannot wait to tell people about. It's going to be magical.
Sometimes you just meet someone and it's not science. It's not like, it's literally, you're just like ignited and you connect. And like, that's what happened for me and Sophie. I feel like I can't speak for her, but we spoke on a panel together about postpartum, and I just felt like we were the perfect complements. She added so much value and like was saying so many things that I was trying to say or my experience, but from her perspective. And I feel like vice versa, similarly. And we just have been like, our brains and souls, I feel like, have been on fire ever since, like just so excited to create something together.
Absolutely. It's
going to
be really, really magical. So where do people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Deepika Chopra. Also my website, www.drdeepikachopra.com.
Keeping it consistent.
And I love DMs. I love comments. Like I've never done anything like strategic or like I've never done anything strategic on Instagram. I probably should, but it's me. I just like don't have any, again, strategy. I don't have like planned posts, or it's really a conversation as well. And I'm super passionate about being transparent. If I'm going to share anything on social media, it's got to be transparent. And that really came for me in motherhood, which is a whole other topic we can talk about. I'm super passionate about.
We didn't even talk about
Yeah,
motherhood.
that's okay.
We'll
Sometimes, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I feel like this is, we'll be doing this again, hopefully.
Yeah, totally.
But it was nice to actually have a time to talk that really wasn't, I got to wear a different hat. And, you know, as moms and dads, we have so many different parts of us. And it was nice to sort of like give space to the career part of me and not really on the career mother part of me.
Yeah. And
Totally.
I think it's also just an honor to sit back and listen and watch. Like I love like watching a D like open up and be ignited in that way. And I think you allowed that to like come out.
I love that. Like I really felt this initial connection to you, Sophie. But then when we met for like tea, D and I just had like, we're like cut from the same cloth.
And that's like
it's cool.
my closest friends have to get and resonate and like connect to a D, or like we can't ever go past that point. Like literally when Adi and I met, I was 20 and my two best friends and college roommates came on our first date. We all saw Death Cab for Cutie together.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And like we're all on each other's laps. Like that's just the way that I am. Like you have to understand and love my person.
Yes.
And like we all have to vibe and connect. Like you should want to go get coffee with my husband if I can't be there. Like that's the way that I run.
Yes.
And like that's what I felt after we all hung out that first time.
Yeah, totally. And we'll do amazing, really, really fun things together. So
I can't wait.
There's going to be so much good stuff. So 5 questions, everybody. We're going to start out with the kind of more ethereal, optimistic ones. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Okay. These are 5 questions on the fly.
On the fly.
Okay, interesting. 2 things come to mind.
Okay.
The first one, my best friend's mom said to me in high school, and I think this one's really interesting because it kind of challenges what I do for a living, which I always like. But it was, when someone shows you their true colors, believe it. So for me, things that come up with that are kind of like, wait, but like people can change. And I strongly believe people can change because that's what I do for a living, is help people change.
Right.
Although it's very hard for change.
Yep.
Change is the hardest thing.
Oh yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic on like, from a soul level and from a neuropsych level, why change is so hard. And we can talk about that too later. But I just feel like, especially growing up and now as a mom again, like I just feel like so much, I evolved so much in being a mother, and I can't put that aside. But yeah, when someone just keeps repetitively showing you who they are and their true colors keep coming out, at some point you have to just believe it and not try to like always, for me, I always try to see, I think I have like the default of trying to see the best in someone or making excuses.
Totally.
And it can go on for years. I mean, years. I was also like super bad at breaking up with ex-boyfriends, like just because, you know, like, and friends.
Same.
And I think what has helped me in that, again, becoming a mom, is the idea of limited space within your own sort of like sense of self. Like you literally, like physically and mentally don't have that much space. And you're emotionally, and you're giving so much that a lot, like I did sort of like without even knowing it, but like a detox of, it's like you were detoxed from some music, intentionally or not intentionally, like it just happened. And then now in retrospect, like sometimes you have to detox from people.
I have a part of my course, relationship detox.
Yes.
I call that worksheet a relationship detox.
I think for me, like this is my 3rd child.
Yes.
So now if you're in my life, it's very,
really,
there's a reason you're in my life. Like it's interesting because even just getting pregnant with Noah, within that first month or so of being pregnant with her, I ridded myself of 3 or 4 relationships that were actually really close to me. Like my relationship with my sister changed. I told her I didn't have space for her in my life during my pregnancy because of her negativity. Like 2 of my very best friends, we completely stopped speaking because I was like, I do not have the emotional capacity. And Noah wasn't even here yet.
Yeah.
That was just her in my body. I was just pregnant with her. And I could feel already, I was really sick, but there was no space for fluff. There was no space for someone who wasn't supportive, lifting each other. positive. Like, I don't have time for someone to bring all their bullshit into my world unless it's in like a safe space where we're both, it's not being abused.
Right.
That's the thing. Is
right.
Very often I bring in these people that need my help constantly, and we go through the same cycles, which is literally the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That cannot happen anymore. I can't have those people in my life. It's just not healthy, and I just don't have the capacity.
Right.
And especially for friends that don't have children, they don't get it.
Right.
They just don't get it. They can try and be the biggest empath, be empathetic of what you might be going through. Oh, you must be breastfeeding a lot. But they don't really get it. They don't really get what it's like to have a human being, much less three of them, that you're caring for and maintaining their life. It's the amount of pressure and the amount of like energy that goes into these humans is insane. Like props to all you mamas out there.
Absolutely. And like, isn't it interesting that like we get to that point? Like my best friend's mom told me this in high school.
Yeah.
I did not do anything about it whatsoever.
Yep.
I let so many cyclical,
Yep.
like exactly what you're talking about in friendships and happen without doing anything about it. But then when I got pregnant and I had my kid, I could do it for him.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's like, why can't we do this for ourselves?
I know.
It's just like question.
It's
but
really interesting.
Isn't that like such a simple, like, and someone shows you their true colors, and sometimes you give them a few chances.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want to see the real true colors.
Yeah.
Like people can be different in different scenarios, but
Sure.
someone shows you their true colors, believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, and now it's like something I totally.
And there's so many examples of it.
Yes.
And until you get it, you can't. But hopefully, if you're listening, you go and you look and evaluate the relationships in your life and the way they make you feel on a regular basis. We all have highs and lows.
Yes.
We all have to just like let it all out and cry and be mad and like talk shit about something.
We
like,
all make mistakes.
We're all
we all say the
human.
wrong thing sometimes.
Totally.
We all hurt each other.
But overall,
Yes.
how does that friendship make you feel? How does it
Right.
leave you? How does that relationship? Maybe it's a family dynamic.
Right.
Maybe something needs to change.
And
or,
consistently. I mean,
exactly.
there were a couple that I, again, let go of, not even intentionally,
Yeah.
in the first like couple months of having Jag.
just happens.
And it's like, my like life is so much better.
I know.
And I like look at Jag every day and I'm like, thank you. I wish
know.
I could say I did it for myself,
Yeah.
but like it just happened.
Yeah.
And then like the second thing that comes up for me is like, remember when you wanted so badly what you currently have. And I think like, especially in the work I do, I'm all the time talking to people about what they want. And so that's another thing. Like in traditional therapy, you talk a lot about what you don't want, but I have like a 90% rule. And we talk about what you don't want 10% and what you do want 90%. But even for myself, like I remember in the first like 5 or 6 months of Jag, I was walking down the street with a stroller in my neighborhood with my husband, and we were like in an argument. And because obviously that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And when you have a kid or just whatever. So I remember being like really upset. And then all of a sudden I got this like glance of like, I have walked up and down this street pregnant, feeling awful, just like wishing and like can't wait for like when I'm going to be like, what will the stroller look like? And my baby, what will his laugh sound like? And I'm going to be like walking hand in hand with Alex. And I was like, wait a second, I've dreamt of this moment and wanted it so badly. And here I am. And like, what am I thinking about? Like the fact that like, I had to do like 2 bedtime routines.
Yep.
And so just that idea that awareness. And like, we have to remind ourselves to just stop and be like, wow, look at everything that I've created.
I built this.
Yeah. And I wanted it so badly. And like, can we just get like a few moments of like, I am so thankful for this, and not just thankful to like some outside source, but like, can you just say thank you to yourself?
Yeah.
Like you did this.
Yeah.
I did this.
Totally. We talk about this a lot because I start to feel a little scattered, or like I want to dream. I'm like such a dreamer, but when it's constantly, especially living in LA, just the constant hustle, I get fucking burnt out.
Totally.
I get burnt out. And, I don't want to talk about like our future home and like look at homes on like Redfin and like that stresses me out. Like we're not at that place right now.
Right.
I don't want to think about that house because I love the house we're in now. And I love the life that we have right now.
Again, the idea of these blanket like manifestations often work against people.
Yeah, exactly. And unless you're in a place where you're ready to receive, like that was a couple years ago when Dave would send me houses and I'm like, get this shit off my email. I don't want to look at this fucking house because it stresses me out. I'm not there. And I can't even I don't have the capacity right now to go there because I am a manifester. I really have, my whole life I've been that way.
Same.
But if I'm not in the right headspace to bring that in, I know I have a good enough awareness of myself that I know this is not the time.
Right.
I'm not there yet. And unless I can really show up to this practice, it's just not going to flow. So for a while I was like, stop sending me things. And now we're at the place where we sat down, we did all the steps that I have to do in my own brain, answer all the type of questions of how am I going to get there?
I love this because that's the missing part of sort of what we talk about, these ideas of blanket, sort of leave it up just to the universe.
No.
These steps.
I work so hard. I am exhausted by my manifesting, but it works.
Yeah, it really does.
But I have to be in the right headspace to receive it and then to go create it.
Yes.
Because then I have to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
So the next one is, what has been your proudest moment?
Oh, by far, absolutely, 100% giving birth. Because maybe little girls shouldn't think about this, but I literally I can't even it's so far back when I was little, I was so fearful of the idea of birth. However it was, I felt the idea of I'm going to be claustrophobic with this baby inside of me that I can't just take off every once in a while
totally.
For 10 months. And the idea of again, my medical stuff comes up, but the idea of physically, how is this baby coming out of me? It just was my biggest fear.
Yeah. There's a teeny tiny hole. How is this happening?
I don't know. And I ended up having to have a C-section. I've never had surgery before in my whole life. And I was so scared about that. The whole thing, no idea of it was okay. Nothing seemed better.
Yeah.
And I did it. And my child survived literally on me. How crazy is that?
How crazy is that?
And I'm so proud of it that now Alex reminds me all the time when I'm fearful of something or anything. He's like, you grew Jag and you gave birth to Jag. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do anything.
You can do anything.
When I fell and had to get stitches, I was so scared. And he was like, you gave birth to Jag. And I was like, oh yeah, I can totally do this. Go for it.
Okay. So on the flip side, what has been your hardest moment?
Interesting. This whole year has been, again, it's my proudest moment and the best time of my whole life. I can't even remember reasons for living before I had my child, but it's been the hardest year. And really, I have such a loving, amazing, great foundation relationship. And today's our anniversary, as I said, but managing relationships outside of my mother-son relationship I've reached some of my hardest points this year. I think it just doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
You just feel is this normal? And talking about it with close friends, you realize it is normal.
Yeah.
And I think more of us that have voices need to speak out about it because it doesn't mean that your relationship is ending or it's bad and there's something wrong or your friendships or your family. Just balancing being a granddaughter and a daughter and a wife and a friend and a doctor to my clients and a mother has been literally the hardest. I have reached the hardest points.
Yeah. It's
but it's normal.
Yeah. And it's normal. And at the same time, it's normal.
Yeah.
Last question.
So this podcast is called Ignited. Do you do self-care?
Oh, no. Self-care.
Not the last question. How do you take care of yourself? What's your daily ritual to make sure that you're taking care of yourself?
I love the aspect and the topic of daily rituals. I actually just wrote this whole article on it for Chalkboard. But little, small rituals, I love little things that to me are big and that you can just do every day. So for me, every single morning when I wash my face in the shower, I say the same Sanskrit mantra that my sister taught me when I was a kid, when I was afraid to sleep in the room by myself. She wouldn't let me sleep with her, but across the hall, she would yell this mantra. And I actually have the last line of it tattooed on my wrist. So I say that in my head. I didn't even know. I didn't plan to do it. It's just something I've done since I was a child. And I do that I didn't even realize that's a ritual, but it is. And then every single Saturday and Sunday, Alex, Jag, and I dance around to the Beach Boys in our house while making breakfast, and we walk for croissants. But awesome. Dancing and music are huge rituals for us on an everyday level. And for me, just realizing after becoming a mom that even something for 1 minute is the most helpful ritual for me. And if I don't do that for 1 minute, it just kind of screws everything up.
Yep.
So having these like grounding anchors, even if they're a minute, like do them.
Love it.
Beautiful. And now the last question is, so this podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you? What gets you going? What's just drives you?
Honestly, like stuff like this, connecting with other adults or children, just other humans, especially coming off of postpartum when you feel really isolated. I remember the first time Alex and I went out on a date, we went to dinner and Alex was like, after dinner, he's like, babe, I think it's pretty obvious you haven't left the house in a while. And I was like, what? He's like, you hugged a random man who didn't want to hug you. And I was like, oh yeah, I definitely feel it.
That's amazing.
Just being like, I don't know, coming through something that feels like you're in it and you're in it. So like motherhood, the first few months, I just felt like, am I ever going to be out of this? I loved it and I wanted to be in it all the time, but I was like, and the fact that where I am right now and connecting with other people, doing what I absolutely love and also getting to go home and be with my kid, like that just ignites me, and giving sort of space to add value in the world, whatever way that is,
awesome.
To like give really ignites me. And like, even though sometimes I want to just be at home with my kid, when I come home, it makes me a better mother.
That's beautiful. Wow.
I'm so
I feel like we could have gone for another hour and a
I'm so
half.
excited for all we have, in the plans, all the cooking.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more
Our
stuff.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
And you guys should all go and follow and just get inspired on a daily basis, because we all need more positivity in our lives for sure.
And just realness, because we got to keep it real. Don't come to my page if you want only positivity, because it's not there.
Yeah.
But like, if you want the real gamut and also how to shift, come say hi.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it.
I love
Thank you
you
so
guys.
much for being here.
Thank you
so
for
excited
having
for more
me.
to come. Thank you all for listening. If you love this, take a screenshot of it, share it with everybody, tag us so we know you're there. We love to see that kind of stuff. See you all next week.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.